Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Jim Fitzpatrick, exclusively on ASBN.com.
Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for watching another edition of The Small Business Show, exclusively right here at ASBN.com. From finding the right people to securing financing, small business owners today are facing a steady stream of challenges. So what's driving these trends and how you can stay ahead? Here to help us unpack all of this we're seeing out there is Mark Valentino, who's head of business banking at Citizens. Thank you, Mark, for joining us on the show today.
Thanks, Jim. It's wonderful to be here.
Sure. So from your perspective, what's behind this growing labor gap that we see and that small business owners are challenged with?
Yeah, I think if we go back to even the COVID times, obviously that's when we started to see a challenge in the labor market for kind of all companies, but specifically I think it trickled down mostly to small businesses who couldn't compete on the wage growth that was happening. I actually ran a healthcare organization during that 3 to 4 year period of time, which was a unique period of time, and I can tell you firsthand that the way labor wage growth grew during that 3 to 4 years, obviously some of it was specific to nursing shortages, but it was also just trying to find all types of labor that work inside facilities and buildings. And you're competing with everybody. You're competing with the large corporates, and you're competing with small businesses. And I think that trend has really not dissipated since 2023. It has moved into 24 and 25. And I also think that, for better or worse, in a very non-political way, what's going on right now with immigration is probably going to be a net loss for small businesses until we figure out how to create more legalized immigration into this country, because I think there is a need for that labor. We're seeing it. I right now reside in Southern California, and I think you're going to see a wider labor gap grow in places like restaurants, farming across the country. And so I do think that it's going to continue to perpetuate, unfortunately, over the next kind of couple of years until we figure this out.
Yeah, it is. And I've spoken to a number of restaurant owners and landscape companies and such that have said this is a real issue, farming as well. And it really is something that small business owners are really struggling with, right?
Absolutely. It's probably the number one pain point for small business owners. We talk a lot about tariffs and inflation, and that's also a very large pain point. I'm sure we'll talk about that today.
Yes.
But actually, labor has continued to be qualified labor, affordable labor has continued to be kind of the number one pain point for business owners as they think about growth.
Yeah, no question. Well, since you went there, let's talk about tariffs. What concerns are you hearing from the people that you're doing business with and the small business owners that you're coming in contact with? The tariffs obviously is front and center of every single news cycle, so it's concerning.
There's a couple challenges. One is the complexity and the speed with which things are happening. If you're a business owner, Jim, you're not spending your days typically watching the news and or following every single change that's occurring on the tariff front. I mean, every single day. I will tell you, at the bank, we have people tracking this daily because that's kind of what we need to do to provide advice to our customers. Most small businesses don't have that skill set inside of their chassis if they're running a couple retail stores or a manufacturing site. And so staying on top of this is probably the hardest factor for business owners right now. I mean, 1 week, there was literally within a 3-week period, you could have gone and picked up goods, and what you had to pay for those goods would have changed 3 or 4 times depending on the country with which you were purchasing those goods. And it's just causing massive cash flow disruption for our customers. I would like to tell you it's somewhat regionally isolated, but I think over time this is going to affect pretty much everyone. And we can even pick companies that we could say, most of their sales are in the U.S. and most of their products are sourced in the U.S. But in some way, shape, or form, the cost issue is going to creep into their business. I was just in New York City this week, talked to a lot of our bankers and customers. I'll use the garment industry as one specific example. Their costs are going up dramatically. Most of their purchases are coming from China or Southeast Asia. And so their input costs are going up. I would say a lot of our customers have tried to negotiate with their vendors, because even the overseas vendors, they are willing to negotiate because they're not going to be able to lose all of these sales as well. They don't want all of their sales to dissipate, or for their customers in the U.S. to go have to find new vendors And so there's some negotiation happening between a US-based company and international vendor distributor. But also, let's just be honest, to consumers, cost hikes are coming to a place near you, and it will affect all of us. It will affect business owners. It will affect consumers. And I think it's just going to be wait and see on how this affects the overall economic landscape. I think there's a lot of different opinions about that. But one, it's really hard for business owners to stay on top of this topic. It's causing massive confusion. And two, it's causing real pain in terms of their cash flow.
Yeah, no question. Is it surprising to you that the economy, they just came out with a report that the economy grew in the last quarter, that the stock market continues to have record highs, that the business just keeps moving along? It seems as though business owners, which make up about 99% of the businesses that are out there in the U.S., they seem to do a very good job of pivoting. They did that even through COVID. You had restaurants that said, okay, our dining room is closed. Guess what? We're gonna make it in the to-go orders that we have. And everybody just seems to be able to pivot. I shouldn't say everybody, but large numbers. We as small business owners, we seem to be a very resilient, creative bunch, don't we?
Those were great descriptions and adjectives, and I would say the same. I think the wonderful thing is that we have one of the most, if not the most resilient economy in the world, and some of the most innovative business owners in the world and entrepreneurs in the world, which is what makes America great. And I think that's terrific. And I think you're right. They find ways to adapt very quickly. I would say this, though. I think the second quarter is probably not the best metric for us to look at because, there was a pause in most tariffs. And so I think we're going to really kind of be on the gas pedal. You can see the administration's really on the gas pedal to try to negotiate more of these big deals here. We have the EU, we have Japan, and so I think they're trying to accelerate the negotiations as well, and actually putting some nice wins on the board probably in many cases. But the longer this goes on, now that 90-day pause is pretty much behind us, most of those costs had not really been passed through yet to customers in Q1 and Q2. This is probably really a Q3 and Q4 story that we need to keep our eyes on. And so I think time will tell if we can kind of keep up this growth story. But I do think it speaks highly to what you just talked about. We are finding ways, business owners are finding ways to work around this. The question really becomes, though, at which point do customers say, you know what, I'm not going to purchase this product anymore because the price has just become, 10, 20, 30% too high for me. And that's probably going to affect more discretionary types of purchasing than it will affect, more staple items, of course, just kind of basic economics. And my customers do tell me, even restaurants, their business has slowed down. So that might actually pan out a story in Q3 and Q4. Let's see. I have talked a lot about the fact that I think there is a disconnect between what's going on in the stock market and what's going on Main Street. It is a bit wild to me that in the midst of everything that we're talking about, given that, small business in the US does make up a good bulk of the economy. It's not a nothing. And I think what you're seeing, though, is that the stock market is really being led by a lot of those kind of Fortune 10 companies, everything happening in AI, which is tremendous, by the way. And I think that's actually going to be one of the innovations that even small business owners can use to navigate through periods like this in terms of becoming more efficient and more innovative in terms of how they market and sell and process. But a lot of that stock market activity, I think today you saw a lot of the big tech companies put up some pretty good results. And there's a big frenzy around AI around those results. And so it's being driven by other things, which is a little bit disconnected from what's going on in Main Street right now. I think you've seen small business optimism come way off of its highs post-election. It's had a little bit of a bounce back here as some of the negotiation has happened, but we're not where we were 6 or 9 months ago. And so I think the story of this economy is really going to be a back half of 25 story. And we just kind of have to see which way we go. Sure.
As you know, capital is really the oxygen to all small business owners out there. I've got a couple of friends of mine that are in banking, and they said that because of the uncertainty in the marketplace right now, they have been much more conservative on giving loans to small business owners. This is something you know a little something about, but access to capital is critical for small businesses, as you know. What trends are you seeing in small business loan demand right now, and how are approval rates holding up?
Yeah, so I'll tell you this: we remain very open for business. We love small businesses. It's one of our primary banking segments in the United States to serve small business customers, and really proud of that. We haven't changed our credit appetite at all, and in fact, we're trying to get, I think, a little bit more innovative around data sourcing and using some of these kind of new fintech developments to actually get better quality data about our customers, so that we can actually increase approval rates and make better decisions.
Sure.
A lot of small business applications actually get rejected because the information on the applications is either incorrect or there's not enough information. And so it's really important for small business customers to try to find a bank where they can work with a banker to complete their application like a Citizens, but there's many great banks out there that can do this.
Sure.
Because the higher the quality of the application, the better the relationship that you have with your bank, whether it's even in the branch or with a business banker, the more likely you are to be able to actually obtain a loan. And so really important, I think, for our customers to know the difference between applying for something online blindly, for example, which I think there's a lot of innovation happening there too, in good ways, but actually having a relationship with people still matters quite a bit in terms of being able to actually get credit and get a loan, because we like to know our customers. We like to know the story. We like to understand the application better. And so that's one piece of advice I always give to small business owners is, whoever your primary bank is, wherever you keep your deposits, even if you're a small customer, get to know the people inside the bank, in the branch or wherever you do your business. And obviously most of us use our phones today to do some of our banking, but there's still a lot of value of having that personal relationship, especially when you might need a loan the most. I will tell you this: I don't think demand has ever really come back the last few years to what we would like to see. And I think the primary driver of that is twofold. Small businesses came out of COVID. We talked about COVID. They came out of COVID with quite a bit of cash from PPP, and they were able to actually figure out how to keep their businesses open and innovate and sell without having to have necessarily their store open, if you will, their physical store. And so if you look at the last 3 years from where the industry was in terms of deposits across banking for small business, we've probably come down from peak COVID stimulus money to where we are today, somewhere in the 30% range, top of deposits to where we are today.
Okay.
So there was a lot of cash that small businesses were using to survive and grow over the last few years. And then you had rates go higher, and then that scared small business. So you had a lot of cash, they didn't need loans. Then now you have high rates, so they really don't want the loan at today's rate. But what you're seeing happening now is a little bit of, okay, I might need a loan now, tariffs, possible inflation going back up again. And so their financials don't look as attractive as they might have looked 1 or 2 years ago had they applied for a line of credit. And a great piece of advice for small business owners is put credit in place when you don't need it.
Yeah.
The cost of having unused credit is fairly cheap. Yeah. And in fact, oftentimes there's no fees.
Right.
If there's fees, they're very small fees. And I know small business owners don't like fees, Jim. I know that very well. But if there are fees, it's very small.
Yeah.
So whether you have a high limit credit card, because a lot of small businesses just use credit card as their source of credit, or a traditional bank line of credit, you can get an SBA product as well. But it's always better to get it when you don't need it. And I think that that's a good life lesson in general, but especially for small business owners. And so what we're seeing now is there might be more applications coming. We'll see, where the financials don't look as good because costs have gone up and And so we're in a situation now, I think, industry wide, where it might be harder to get credit, to your point, mainly because the situation doesn't look as attractive from a creditworthiness standpoint.
Right. We just had the administrator of the SBA, Kelly Loeffler, here in our studios last week, and I asked her the question, in light of all of this uncertainty that's out there because of tariffs and higher interest rates and such, is this a good time to start a small business? For those people that are sitting on the sidelines and waiting for the right time to jump in, is this a good time to do that in light of everything? She said, absolutely, it's a great time to start a small business, and in fact, that the SBA will help you to do just that. Would you agree, Mark, that now's a good time to start a small business?
Yeah, I think whenever there's periods of disruption or periods of confusion, it's typically when there's a lot of net winners in the economy. And so I would echo that sentiment. I think if you go back and look at historical data, small business originations, more small businesses are started during recessions, for example, than at any other times in history, and that's because people end up out of jobs. They have to figure out what are they going, and so you get a lot of this kind of independent entrepreneurial stuff. We're not there as an economy. We're doing quite well still, I think, but I think the point still holds that there's some confusion and there's some headwinds that need to be sorted out, but absolutely. And I think we're seeing that trend actually happen amongst kind of mid-career and young people, moving more into kind of business ownership. I would also say that the gig economy, call it what you want, it's a form of small business in many ways. People are working for themselves.
Sure.
That's I think here to stay and probably here to grow.
That's right.
In terms of the unique new jobs, when I was coming out of college, delivering groceries and driving people around in cars was not a career option. Where you can make a salary to pay rent, but today it is.
It is. There's no question.
And
That's right.
And for many good reasons, people choose to do that.
That's right. And
so
we saw through COVID, so many people started a side hustle. They started a business from their home because they were working from their home. So they're like, well, I got a little extra time here, or maybe even a little extra money because of some of the money that was thrown around out there from the government.
And now you're seeing this new trend. I'm not there yet, but it's happening, of this kind of co-living, where people are renting out rooms in their houses and things of that nature. I think that's going to be a growing segment of economic activity as well.
That's right. Mark Valentino, head of business banking at Citizens. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. I know that our viewing audience of small business owners and entrepreneurs and those that are thinking about it will get a lot out of our discussion today. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Jim. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Jim Fitzpatrick, exclusively on ASBN.com.